Welcome to the Maria Liberati Show, where food meets art, travel, and life. So, what does food mean to you? I first want to thank everyone that came out to the Taste Philadelphia event and my book signing and food sampling. It was so nice meeting everyone at the Valley Forge Casino and Resort this past weekend. Thank you to everyone that came out. It was so nice seeing everyone again. You know, we weren't able to do the event for 2 years, but it's back again, and I just again wanted to thank everyone, and I hope you got a chance to sample my dessert lasagna and my couscous appetizers. And if you didn't, I will be doing it again at the Lancaster Taste event. That's in Lancaster, Pennsylvania on November 11th and 12th. You can find tickets online, and I hope to see you there. This week, my guest is Sheri Lynch. She is a radio personality and author of a charming book called Cooking with Cats, and she's going to share some of her book with us on today's episode. And you know, today, the day that I'm recording this episode, is actually World Pasta Day, even though the day that you're hearing this is October 26th. October 25th is World Pasta Day. And in honor of that, I'm going to share an excerpt from my latest book, The Basic Art of Italian Cooking, Diaries, Seasons. It's an excerpt from in October that I was in Italy, and it's a recipe for a lemony couscous. You know, couscous is a pasta that is particularly used in Sicily, but it's also used all over the world. So stay with me. This is an excerpt from an October that I was in Italy, an excerpt from my blog and my diary from Italy about couscous and a recipe. Couscous is pasta too. Most of us don't think of it as one, but in Sicily, a dish of couscous is commonly served as a first course, like a pasta dish. Here's my recipe for an easy to make, bright, fragrant couscous dish. Use lemon oil to emphasize the fresh lemony taste. Lemony couscous. 1 cup of couscous, 1¼ cup of water, 1 teaspoon of lemon oil, 1 tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil, 3/4 teaspoon of sea salt or kosher salt or Himalayan salt, 1/2 cup of chopped scallions, 1/4 cup of chopped leeks, a fresh garlic clove minced, finely grated peel of 1 fresh lemon, and 1/4 teaspoon of freshly ground black pepper. In a saucepan, heat the water till boiling. It should be about a 2 to 3 quart size saucepan. Add in the couscous when the water is boiling with the sea or the kosher or the Himalayan salt. Cover and reduce heat. Simmer for approximately 10 minutes, stirring once. Place the extra virgin olive oil in a small saute pan. Place in the scallions, leeks, garlic, and saute on low to medium heat for 3 minutes or until the leeks, scallions, and garlic have just begun turn golden. Stir in the lemon peel, remove from the heat. Drain the couscous, place the couscous in the saute pan with a garlic mixture. Toss gently, drizzle with lemon oil. Serve and top with freshly ground black pepper. For a garnish, decorate the plate with long strips of lemon peel or fresh lemon slices and fresh torn mint leaves. And today we have a fun author. She's got a fun book out. This is Sheri Lynch. She's a radio personality, author, and I love the title of this book. It's Cooking with Cats. So, Sheri, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Marie. I'm so glad to be here.
So, and you're from my hometown, Philly, right? That's what you just told me.
Yeah, as soon as you spoke, I got so homesick. I'm from Philadelphia. I moved to Wyoming as a kid, so my accent flattened out a little bit. But I came back east for high school and college and went to Temple, my fellow Temple owl.
Yes, yes.
Yes. So tell me, how did you get? I know I just mentioned I have an idea because I always have this idea to do a book with my dog about cooking for her because I'm always cooking for her and she's in the kitchen with me all the time. So tell me, how did you get the idea of cooking with cats?
Well, I've always had lots of animals in the house.
Uh-huh.
Cats, dogs, hamsters, reptiles, fish, you name it. And at the moment, I have 4 cats, which is the most cats I've ever had at one time. 4 all at the same time.
Oh
And
my
that
God.
is a lot of, I'm just going to be honest, Maria, that's a lot of cats. So people would say things to me like, ew, girl, I would never want to eat anything you cooked with all
Oh
those
no.
cats, as
Uh-huh.
though I was letting the cats take a nap in the lasagna or whatever, right?
Exactly, or lick it or something. Yes, I know. I've heard those kinds of comments. Yes.
Yeah. So, I would always like kind of go, oh, trust me, the cats are not in the food, or, well, it's your loss because I'm a really good cook or whatever.
There you
And
go.
then COVID hit, the pandemic hit in the very early days of the lockdown. And my business partner, Tony Garcia, and I were on the phone one day, and he's like, you need a pandemic project. And as a joke, I said, yeah, I think I'm going to write a cookbook for crazy cat people where the cats are in every recipe and all over the kitchen. And we laughed. And then he called me 2 days later and told me we had a publisher lined up.
Oh
And
my
so
gosh.
then, I had to write this
You got to
cookbook. So
produce it. Yes.
like anyone who grows up in a big Italian American family,
Hmm.
I grew up around food, and I grew up in a family, in a household filled with women who cooked, but they never used a recipe. Everything was by feel and by taste and by touch. And so I learned to cook
Hmm.
like that.
Uh-huh.
But
Yeah.
when you cook like that, it's very difficult to, when someone says, "Oh, will you share your recipe?" And you're like,
Yes.
I don't even know.
Yeah.
So I decided that I would write this cookbook, and I would use actual recipes that I knew were really, really delicious, that had been
Uh-huh.
refined by many generations of immigrant cooks.
Uh-huh.
And what I didn't know, Maria, is when you write a cookbook like that, you have to cook these dishes sometimes 12, 13, 14, two
Yes.
dozen times,
Yes. Yes.
and painstakingly measure. Like my grandma Bartholetti's meatballs, which are in the cookbook.
Uh-huh.
It's a great story. That's my maternal grandmother. Her husband came over from Sicily. She came over from Ireland. He taught her how to make his mother's recipe. It's a handful of this. It's a handful of that. It's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And so I must have made
Uh-huh.
300,000 meatballs, measuring out like, what is a handful? How much
Right.
is a handful?
Exactly.
Anyway, for months and months and months, and it all happened in the first wave of the COVID lockdown when we were all in our houses anyway.
Yes.
All I did was cook. And I
Uh-huh.
had a notebook where I would, like, in different colors pencil, I would cross something out and go, no, that's a half a cup of Reggiano or
Right.
whatever. And my poor family ate these dishes over and over again. And then I reached out to my radio audience. So, in addition to having a couple of podcasts, I also have a syndicated radio show that's heard in like 70 domestic markets and worldwide on Armed Forces Radio. So, I reached
Oh.
out to my audience and said, I'm working on a project. If
Uh-huh.
you have any pictures of your cats raising hell in the kitchen, send them to me. They could be included in the book. And
Right.
so when it was all said and done, all of the recipes are, these, and I promise you, they're all really delicious, authentic family recipes. And every picture in the book is a listener or a friend or a family member's cat
Oh,
going nuts in the kitchen.
wonderful. Wonderful. That's a great podcast project. And I love that because I did the same thing. Not podcast. I'm sorry. The pandemic project.
Pandemic.
Getting all confused. Yes, because I know I had a couple of pandemic projects, that made it bearable, and you were able to do something fun like that. So that's a great pandemic project and a fun pandemic story. Oh, I love that you also got your listeners involved too. That's wonderful. And that was my other question too. People can hear your radio show on Armed Forces Radio. Is that where it's syndicated?
Well, we're syndicated all around the United States. And then our show is also carried on the Armed Forces Radio Network on Joe Radio. So I think we're in like 86 countries and some submarines and probably some top secret underground. I don't even know. But one of the coolest things about it and about doing it this way in the pandemic was it gave us all like a little thing we were working on together. And then the finished book is just, it's wonderful. It's people all around the country, sharing images of their, this is a great one. Cat has a chef hat on, right?
Oh, how cute.
And so at a time when we were all feeling very isolated and scared, it's easy now to forget how in the beginning of the pandemic, we didn't know anything.
Yes.
We didn't know anything. There were refrigerator trucks lining up on the streets of New York to serve as morgues. I mean, it was a scary, scary time. And I think people needed ways to connect and be distracted. And this was really a fun project for that.
Fun thing. And that's actually how I started my podcast. I was supposed to actually do a radio show here in Philly and do a TV series. Well, all the studios got closed down. So I decided, you know what? I need to do a podcast, but I wanted it all about fun things because that was a time when people needed to just have things to occupy their mind and fun things, not stressful things. You have to remove all the stressors. So I love it that you did something very similar. You already had your radio show, but you found a way to get people to be able to have fun, come together, share pictures of their cats and your recipes, and just get through the pandemic and in a fun, not that it was fun, but to at least have something entertaining to look forward to. Because you're right, at the beginning, I often think back of how scary a time it was at the very beginning. But and now we're just kind of coming out of it and going, being able to go out and do things. But you're absolutely right. But I think that's such a great project. So when was the book first published? Is it?
So let's see. We got it out, I think at the beginning of November of 2020.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was I started on it in June, and I mean, I worked, like I did my day job and then I cooked.
Yeah.
And some of the recipes in the book, some of them, I had been making for so long, they were easy to translate into actual recipes. And some of them I can't even tell you how many loaves of streusel pumpkin bread. Because when you're just sprinkling the spices in, is it a half a teaspoon? Is it a teaspoon? Is it? Oh my God, Maria, it was insane.
Yes, I know.
So we got it.
Go ahead. Yes. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So the book is printed, and then there's it's at a publisher in the Midwest. Wicked snowstorm. We can't get it shipped in time to deliver it. So my husband jumped in his truck, drove to Iowa, loaded all of the books he could fit into his truck, drove home, and we made a mass production shipping station on the floor of our living room, and we got them shipped out so they could be shipped out in time for the holidays.
That was one wonderful story. No, I was just going to say, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but what I was going to say is people are always asking me, so how long does it take to do a cookbook? They don't realize, you have these recipes, but then you do have to test them out. And I did grow up, just as you said, even though I went to school for, the culinary arts, but a lot of my recipes really are influenced because my family, big Italian family, they're influenced by recipes that I've had in my family. So a lot of it, I did grow up with people that did the same thing, a handful of this, handful of that, handful of the other. So a lot of the recipes, even though I like stuff that I learned in school, I still like to kind of tweak them. So it's a lot of going through, testing out. It takes a long time to write a cookbook because you have to test out the recipes. So you're absolutely right. And probably it was kind of good that there was the pandemic, not good, but in a way, because you had the time, a little more time to be indoors and doing all that. And I have a book that just came out and it was the same thing. I also did that during the pandemic. It actually took a little bit extra time because of the supply chain slowdown as well, and getting them out. And also my book usually takes years, took me actually 3 years for the latest one. But hey, it all worked and everything just came through. So, but what I was going to ask you, so is there, like, has anybody written to you about a favorite recipe, or do you one of the cat? I would probably say the cat with the chef hat will probably get a lot of attention. But is there a favorite?
Well, you'll appreciate this, Maria, coming from an Italian family. Like some of the recipes in our family were secret. And they were not written down, and they were not going to be shared. And all my grandmothers and aunts were fiercely competitive over who made the best meatballs, who made the best cheesecake, right? So I had to petition my mom to let me release her mom's meatball recipe.
Oh, wow.
And so of all the recipes in the book, the ones that I get the most feedback from, not surprisingly, are my grandmother's authentic Italian meatballs. Because if you did not grow up in that kind of kitchen, there's a lot of things that the average home cook doesn't understand. Like, you cannot work your ground beef to death, or you make it tough, right? Now, we could talk all day long about the science of protein and all of that other stuff. But the bottom line is you have to handle those meatballs with great gentleness. And so I was able to not only give the recipe, but the technique for that. And there are a lot of people that until they made that had never had like a real Sunday gravy Italian meatball.
Right. Exactly.
I also threw in the recipe for real Sunday gravy, which outside of, the Philadelphia, New Jersey area, they call it sauce. But real Sunday gravy has, pork in it, and braciole, and meatballs, and sausage, all these wonderful things. So I get a lot of feedback about that. And then the other one is my chicken pie. As a kid, I hated pot pie because it was just like, it was goo. And you weren't allowed to just eat the crust. You had to also eat the weird thick goo with the one bright green pea. Right? So I decided, if I'm going to eat a chicken pie, I'm going to, by God, eat a chicken pie. So I make a chicken pie that has basically a whole chicken in it.
Oh, wow.
And it's decadent. So this is not like, like typically, I grew up with poverty cuisine where you were using every ingredient, right, Maria?
Yes, exactly.
Nothing was wasted, right?
Right, exactly.
Like a lot of really amazing Southern Italian cuisine is very poverty-based cuisine.
Exactly.
But the chicken pie I made wasn't like, well, we've got some leftovers from a roast chicken, let's make a pot pie. It is a meal and an occasion in itself. It is just like, you can pick it up with your hand. It's so rich with chicken and homemade stock and all of the things. And so those are the two recipes that I hear a lot about.
Wow. And yes, that poverty cuisine is called cucina povera, that was so famous in Italy. Some of those recipes are served in the most expensive restaurants, like in New York City. These recipes that women had to figure a way to keep the foods delicious and tasty, but reuse and reuse. There's a bread soup that they made in Tuscany, and what they used to do is get the day old bread, couple days old bread, and use that to thicken like tomatoes and make a tomato soup. Well, that soup, I actually had that in an extremely expensive Tuscan themed restaurant in New York City. And there's so many other things so you're absolutely right. I grew up in that type of cuisine, but it was actually delicious, really delicious food, right? So it was great. It sounds like you're tweaking some of that stuff and using that also. But yes, I do remember the Sunday gravy, and I can just remember my grandparents' house in South Philly and walking home to their house, and we couldn't wait to dip the bread in the gravy. And she used to have this gigantic pot of sauce gravy, right, with the braciole and the sausage and the meatballs. And we would rush home from Sunday church, and everybody would want to dip their bread in the sauce and get a piece of sausage or a meatball or something before dinner, was ready. So that sounds great. Yeah, not everybody experienced it. And I think I grew up thinking, hey, everybody knows what that is.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. So it's nice that you're giving people that experience, because it sounds like it's an experience also. Your book is not only just recipes, but you're giving people an experience. So you have 4 cats now?
I have 4 cats now. Larry Munson, Charles Xavier, Tiberius, and Ms. Esme.
Uh-huh.
What happened was, so in case people are wondering, like, how do you end up with so many cats? When my daughters were little, they wanted a kitten, and then the kitten needed a friend.
Right.
And then when I went to get the kitten a friend, there was an older cat there that needed a home, and I took her in. And then I met a lady at the park one day, Maria, walking a Bengal on a leash. And I just went up to her and I said, "Excuse me, but you are embodying every fantasy I've ever had. How did you leash train your cat?" And this led to a conversation. And it turned out she was a breeder of Bengal cats. They're these big, magnificent cats. They're half domestic cat, half like Asian leopard or some crazy thing. Anywho, you will love this. Listen to this. So she said, "I actually have a litter of kittens." And she whipped out her phone and she pulled it up and she handed me her phone and she said, "There's a million pictures, just scroll." So I'm scrolling and scrolling. I went one too far and I gasped. And she looked and she said, "Oh, my husband works out of town. Sorry about that. I saw everything that God gave her husband, all of it, buck naked, like my eyes." Okay. So we exchanged numbers and she reached out to me and said, "Look, these kittens are very, very, very expensive, but I can tell you're a true cat lady. And I will let you have one of these kittens." I mean, basically for a couple $100, it was a song.
Oh my gosh.
So that is how I acquired Larry Munson, my kitty best friend.
Yes. And I'm always afraid because so I used to have a cat. He was the love of my life, Tigger. And he was the only cat actually that I had. And when he went, it was like, it wasn't in my heart to get another, but my little dog came along and I'm always afraid that I'm meeting people that have, because I'm a sucker for puppies or kittens too. I just adore them. And I'm just afraid I'm going to meet somebody that has a puppy just like you did. And it's like, oh, I think I need another one, or I think I need another one. Not that I wouldn't like it. It's just that I know I'll be growing, my family of dogs or kitty cats too. I don't have a kitty cat now. I just have my pup, but she's not a pup anymore. But she's become the love of my life. But yeah, I know how that is. It's definitely an addiction, and it's not easy to resist. So that's
people think, they're like, "Well, you have 4. What's one more?" Well, I'm here to tell you, one more is not a thing that's going to happen around here. Like, I am a full-time cat valet at this point.
Yes.
Oh, and we also have, like, my husband and I have a pretty big blended family, and we have other pets. So it's not like all I'm doing is scooping these cat boxes and chasing them around. Yeah, it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts.
Well, I have one, and I have one, and actually my brother has one, so I'm kind of part-time mom to his dog too. So, and then a good friend of mine has another one that's kind of the best friend to my dog. So I kind of feel like I have 3, and I'm like a concierge, a puppy concierge, really.
Thank you. Yes.
So exactly, they get whatever they want, and so that's why, as I said, I'm always afraid. Oh no, if somebody has a puppy, I know I'm not going to resist it if they ask me.
I know.
I'll be bringing another one home. But anyway, or a kitty cat. But it's definitely a lovely story. So Sheri, where can people get the book, Cooking with Cats?
So Cooking with Cats is now available on Amazon.com. But I want to give you a caveat. Amazon, the markup on Amazon forces us to price it higher than if you just go directly to our website, which is BOBANDSHERI.com, bobandsheri.com.
Okay.
And there's a tab that'll say store, and you click on that. We don't have any of the Amazon markups. So we're able to sell it almost at cost. And we do, every 6 months or so, we donate significant portion of the proceeds to shelters and organizations that help with cats. I mean, this was not something that, you don't do something like this because you're trying to get rich. This was a fun pandemic project.
Exactly. I think
And
it's
we
a
like
project out of love for kitty cats and cooking and all of that, being able to share. So it's wonderful that nice to hear that you donate to a shelter too. So it's definitely purchasing it for a good cause. And so if people can go to your website, it's probably even better because they'll get it at cost. And
you can get it much cheaper. And every recipe has a little story about the recipe.
Oh, I love that.
And some of the recipes were volunteered by some crazy cat people who were also really good cooks that I reached out to, as well as all the pictures. And there's some really funny pictures in the book too. But I promise you, all of the recipes are like super delicious. Wow. There may be some things in there, like for some of my listeners in the Midwest who had never had like real meatballs or real gravy. But then I've got some amazing Southern recipes because I'm married to a Southern man, like skillet, creamed corn and bacon made in a cast iron skillet that a lot of my like Umba friends at home, up north at home, have never tried.
Exactly. Yeah. The Southern cooking is so delicious. Yeah. It's amazing. And there's a whole culture and history to the South of the United States. There's just such a culture and a history to the foods and such delicious recipes. You're right that a lot of us here in the Northeast aren't really aware of. So that's nice to hear that you're sharing that as well. So it's a mix, not only of Italian recipes, right, but all different recipes. That's great. And tell us where we can find your radio shows. I know you said Armed Forces Radio. Is there anywhere?
So if you are active military or military family, retired military, and you're living on base, you can listen to the show on Joe Radio, on Armed Forces Radio. We are carried on 70 plus stations here in the United States, and the easiest way to find the one near you is to go to our website, again, bobandsheri.com, and you'll see a heat map that'll show you all the stations. I mean, we're everywhere from Maine, Texas, California, Florida, everywhere in between. And we also turn every daily radio show into a podcast where we strip out any music and commercials and that sort of thing. And that's available Monday through Friday, anywhere you get your podcasts. And this is like, radio is it's been my day job for my entire adult life.
Yes.
I'm also a writer. This is my first cookbook, but I've written and published other books, and now I'm an entrepreneur. And as you know, Maria, like if you're a woman in this country, you just get up every morning and you start working until you collapse.
Exactly. You're absolutely right. You just do that. You do that because I think, women don't realize there's a lot of talent. Not that I don't want to say that men don't have a lot of different talents, but we're always, I think we have to multitask as women. So there's a lot of these talents inside of us and we want to use them all up. So, as an entrepreneur, you have to have many, many different talents. So that's wonderful. And what's the name of your podcast? Because people can just look up, is it the Sheri Lynch Show or no?
Yeah. So we have a couple of podcasts. The main radio podcast is Bob and Sheri, the website, right?
Yes.
Then we have another podcast called The Oddcast. And I'm actually getting ready to launch a third and then I have another one called Fun Size. I stay busy. I'm getting ready to launch a fourth podcast in 2023 that I'm really, really excited about, that I'm working on. Because apparently I just do not have enough to do.
Yes, exactly. No, we don't, we just have to remember
did that to me.
Sleep for at least an hour, right? You got to do at least an hour of sleep anyway.
But when I'm sure you felt this too in the pandemic, my job had been really busy. I traveled a lot. I was always out in the world. And then the pandemic shut everything down. Exactly. And I realized that all those years that I thought what I just wanted to do was come home and sit on the couch, that it was too late for that, that I had changed my internal wiring to just be like, let's hustle.
Yes. Yes.
And so, here we are.
Yes, exactly. But what I think the one thing that I learned in the pandemic, it was kind of nice. again, it wasn't a nice thing to go through. But the thing that was kind of nice was, wow, because I was doing the same, traveling all over, like living in different parts of the world and going back and forth, back and forth. And it's like, I couldn't do that anymore, at least for that period of time. And it's like, you know what? I was kind of taking a breath and just kind of reverting and finding a new way to just do what I was doing. And it was kind of neat because I just, how you make, what do they say? You make lemonade out of lemons. So I was trying to make a good thing out of a not so great thing. So I thought, you know what, now's the time to kind of be able to sit back, relax, keep working, but just learn how to do it in another way. And I think for those of us that learned or that did that, we were able to happily, just make it through and come through with flying colors. And that's all it is, reinventing yourself.
I think you're right. And for me, like a really deeply renewed and more profound gratitude for the fact that I had a warm, safe place to shelter in during the pandemic. And, my family, we had losses, we had COVID losses, but we did not experience any more hardship than anyone else did. And I was grateful for that. My kids were old enough to where they lost a lot, but my kids were old enough to where they lost a lot on the social and milestone side, but not so much academically. And I know a lot of families and kids are struggling with some of those learning losses. So there's a lot to be thankful for.
There is definitely. And if anything, it taught us really to have gratitude and be thankful for what we have. It's not so little and you can't take it just for granted. You have to really be thankful. So we're almost out of time. Unfortunately, I could probably sit here and talk to you all day.
I would love to talk about cooking with you. I bet you have all sorts of good stories.
Oh, yes. Well, let me know if I know you have a lot of podcasts, so I'd love to be on one. Definitely let me know.
That would be fun.
Yes. And so we'll put on the website on the MariaLiberatiShow.com, your website also, when this airs as well. And thank you so much for being here, Sheri, and much luck with everything. And I'm sure you'll be starting something else shortly too. Well, I know you have your other podcast, but if you're like me, right, we just, we got to only sleep for 1 hour and then it's got to be something else to fill our not busy time. Thanks again, Sheri. I'm sure we'll see you soon.
Take care.
Okay.
Thanks for listening to the Maria Liberati Show and joining us this week. And thanks as always to my producer, Britton Roselle, and this week's special guest, Sheri Lynch. And once again, thanks to everyone that came out to my book signing and sampling at the Taste Philadelphia event at the Valley Forge Casino and Resort Center this past weekend. And put on your calendar the Lancaster Taste Festival in Lancaster, Pennsylvania on November 11th and 12th. Hope you can come out and join us again then. And I will be joined by lots of other celebrity chefs and lots of great food and wine and lots of fun. So please, it's November 11th and 12th. Please come out and join us. It's always a lot of fun to see everyone and get to meet everyone. That's November 11th and 12th. It's at the Lancaster Marriott in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and you can buy tickets online. Just look up Philly Taste or Lancaster Taste. And you can also find my latest book, this week's recipe was from, The Basic Art of Italian Cooking, Diaries, Seasons. You can find that book on Amazon or Kindle or really anywhere books are sold online. Or you can also find it at marialiberati.com. Or if you'd like to get an autographed copy, come out to the Lancaster Taste Festival on November 11th and 12th at the Lancaster Marriott, and I will have signed copies there. I'll be autographing copies actually and sampling some recipes from the book, so please come out and join us. And you can also find me on Instagram at Maria Liberati, on Facebook at Chef Maria Liberati, on Twitter at Maria Liberati, on the Maria Liberati channel on YouTube, on Roku, at the Basic Art of Italian Cooking by Maria Liberati channel. You can also find me on my blog and website at marialiberati.com. And on Pinterest, you can find me at Maria Liberati, and on LinkedIn, you can find me at linkedin.com/in/mliberati. And if you get a chance to try that lemony couscous recipe, let me know how you like it. And also take a picture, share it on social media, hashtag it the Maria Liberati Show, and we may also share your picture on the marialiberatishow.com website. So please share and let us know how you like it. And until next week, peace, love, and pasta.